Hello students, welcome to EPG Padashala. This module is about biopiracy. So as the name says, biopiracy, it's a piracy. So it's an illegal as well as unethical exploitation of traditional knowledge base for lucrative and commercial purposes. In this module, we will see how the biopiracy is different from bioprospecting, which is a legal as well as ethical acquisition of the samples. We will also see some of the famous case studies of biopiracy. For example, basmati rice, turmeric, as well as Maya controversy, and a number of such cases. We will see some of these famous case studies of the biopiracy. And ultimately, we will see why bioprospecting, there is a tremendous current slowdown on the bioprospecting post the implementation of a number of protocols, the international legal framework. So let's start today's module by explaining some of the objectives of today's module. So first of all, we have to differentiate between these two terms, bioprospecting as well as biopiracy. And we will then finally, subsequently we'll go through some of the famous case studies. So the case studies include Maya ICGB controversy, basmati rice controversy, Darjeeling tea, cassia, neem, turmeric, tamarind, okra, jaramla, brazil berries, captopril, enola beans, quinoa, rosy periwinkle, BT brinjal, artemisinin, as well as hoodia. So finally, we will learn about the slowdown, the current slowdown on this particular biopiracy as well as the bioprospecting. So first is, many people think biopiracy and bioprospecting are synonymous, but subtle there are differences. So bioprospecting is sample acquisition is legal as well as ethically correct manner. But biopiracy, the term used to refer that indigenous knowledge is being exploited. So if there are no indigenous knowledges involved, then the case is no more a biopiracy. So in the case of bioprospecting, it is proper legal as well as ethical utilization or exploration of the resources. See, exploration and exploitation. So in the case of biopiracy, it is an exploitation, while in the case of bioprospecting, it is exploration of the natural resources. So the biopiracy do not include any prior informed consent or equitable benefit sharing between the parties. So it is an exploitation. What is prior informed consent or free prior informed consent? As the term says, free, which is totally free. You obtain this free prior informed consent from the sample provider by the company. So when you approach a sample provider, you are getting this prior informed consent free of charge and without any caution, without any force. And it's a decision-making process, of course, the prior informed consent. So the prior informed consent means it's prior. So before even obtaining the sample, you're getting this informed consent. So that's why it's prior. And it is an informed consent. So you have to inform them what are the implications of the sample and how the samples could be used for generating the profit. So all this information needs to be transmitted to them, to the party where you're getting the sample. And finally, it is a consent that is legally abiding, yes or no. So if you say it is yes, it is legally abiding. If you say no, then it is also a legally abiding. So that difference you need to be very certain about. So there are different political dimensions involved with this biopiracy as well as bioprospecting. Certain political groups, for example, left or anti-globalization firms, they are against any forms of bioprospecting. There are several political dimensions in this dialogue to decide whether is it a biopiracy or a bioprospecting. For example, no matter what, certain political ideologies which are anti-global, for example, left or communists, they normally refer any forms of bioprospecting as biopiracy. So one example is the way biopiracy is defined. A popular way of defining the biopiracy is a practice of commercially exploiting naturally occurring genetic material or biochemical, which is identical, which is synonymous to the definition of bioprospecting. So some parties actually call these two terms as synonymous, but subtle there are differences between these two things. Even if the consent is obtained, the exploration of or exploitation of natural resources is still considered as biopiracy by the few. So that political dimension needs to be taken care. While the consensus is that bioprospecting is ethical, while biopiracy is not ethical. And now another attribute of biopiracy is that it involves the exploitation of traditional or indigenous knowledge resources, while bioprospecting do not involve this sort of the traditional knowledge. For example, tribal or folk or ethnomedicine or alternate medicines, etc. These are not included at all in the case of bioprospecting, while in the case of biopiracy, yes, these are involved. One example is cyclosporin A, which is an immunosuppressant. A Swiss scientist, he went on to the Norway, that is in Scandinavia, on the family vacation, and while coming back from Norway to Switzerland, he brought few soil samples along with them. So further processing of the soil sample revealed a very interesting fungus. And the fungus gave rise to this very famous drug called cyclosporin A, which have further developed into a blockbuster drug. A lot of profits have been generated, almost to the tune of $1 billion per annum, but not a single money has ever went back to Norway. Why this case is not referred to as biopiracy? Because there is no indigenous knowledge involved. It's only the soil sample has been, of course, that is this an exploration or exploitation? It all depends upon the ethics and morality of which is highly subjective terms. So the heart of this biopiracy involves ownership. So how can you ever take ownership on the soil sample, or can a particular country take ownership of the all plant resources that the particular country is present? For example, a number of plant species that India has been arrived millions of years ago from various other countries in the world. So there is no country in the case of biogeography, it's only biogeographic regions. So the country is a political construct. So you know, the lot of different dimensions involved, and especially the ownership became a very tricky manner while dealing with biopiracy issues. Another example is that a number of countries do allow patenting plant products as well as plants. For example, United States allow plant species patents, but you know, a newly developed plant variety can be patented there. But in the case of India, do not allow any plant to be patented. So that is yet another thing. You know, can a firm or community or a nation claim the ownership or a particular species of an organism? That is actually very difficult decision. The case is quite similar to the taxonomy. For example, Tulsi, which is Ocimum tenuiflorum or Ocimum sanctum or Linnaeus. So that the particular name has been described by Carl Linnaeus, which is a Swedish taxonomist. You know, that particular name, the formal name of Ocimum tenuiflorum is attributed to Carl Linnaeus. So he is authority of the taxonomic name. But does that mean that there is no such name existed even before the Carl Linnaeus named that particular organism? Of course not. Tulsi is a Sanskrit name. So the formal description is a taxonomic artifact that is done by Carl Linnaeus. So he cannot take a claim for entire intellectual property of that particular plant. It's only for the taxonomic discipline. Patenting a plant species are not allowed in India, as explained to you. It is allowed in the US though. Though plants can develop into the transgenics, and you know, you can do certain market monopoly by the American firms. For example, you know, firms like Monsanto can purposefully, deliberately, they can produce certain plant species which are you know, which are not fertile. So the sterile seeds can never be you know, they can never actually reuse it, replant it. So that will force the consumer to again and again buy the same kind of seeds from the same company. So these are all examples of the market monopoly. So biopiracy normally include targeting the indigenous knowledge base. Why do you really have to target the indigenous knowledge base? The reason is quite obvious, that to increase the success rate for, especially for bio prospecting the drug firms. So to find a drug from the random natural screening is extremely tedious process. So you need to screen a humongous number of plant extracts to find a potential drug candidate. So this is used as a heuristic, as a shortcut to find a successful, to increase the rate of success. That the companies normally look for the drug candidates inside the indigenous knowledge base. For example, in the traditional medicine. For one example is artemisinin, which is used in Chinese traditional medicine for thousands of years, and we have actually used this artemisinin to develop the anti-malarial drug. So thousands of years of trial and error, that kind of strategy has been used by the indigenous knowledge base to find a successful the drug candidate. So it's natural that the drug companies, rather than screening all the plant, random screening of the plant extracts, they rather take the shortcut to go through the indigenous knowledge base. So another issue with this biopiracy is that there is a huge rich to poor divide in the whole world. If you look at the world map like this particular slide, you can see that most of the tropics remain resource rich but economically poor. Resource rich because the biodiversity is very high. This can be linked with yet another theory, and that is called species energy relationship. Because the tropics get maximum sunlight, the tropics are relatively warmer to support a number of biodiversity. So the biodiversity in tropics is very rich, but comparing with that of the temperate regions. It's also connected with the imperialism, because the imperial countries are normally temperate or subtropic, like in the case of United Kingdom, and they normally go and colonize the regions in the tropics to assimilate or acquire or even appropriate the samples, the biological resources, and they bring back these samples back to their countries, and which is definitely it's an unethical. So it depends upon which political subjectivity that you follow, but you can definitely term it as an unethical practice. One example is analogy is Kohinoor diamond. Which is actually, it was actually our own property, the Indian property. Now the Kohinoor diamond is in London, the Tower Museum in London. So how did the Kohinoor diamond go all the way back to the London? Or when you go to the British Museum, you can see a whole section on mummies. So the Egyptian mummies, tens of original Egyptian mummies were acquired by the Britishers when they colonized the Egypt. So is it moral to keep those mummies in the British Museum? So these are the highly subjective and highly ethical questions that is pertinent to the discussion on the biopiracy as well. So the scope of biopiracy deals with plant materials or extracts and other natural products, the animal-based products as well. For example, a number of venoms, snake venoms are used in pharmaceutical sciences. A number of blockbuster drugs have been developed from the venoms. We will see that in our subsequent discussion. And also, other than plants as well as animals, you can also get their genes, the genetic resources of these plants and animals as well as microorganisms. It's a very, very essential, a very valuable biological resource that is used for bioprospecting as well as for biopiracy. For example, the genes of wild races are involved with various desirable attributes, for example, disease resistance or the drought resistance and tolerance to a number of stress, biotic stress or abiotic stress, also with the high yield. So these genes also, we can use it, it's a valuable resource. So if you use these genes in an unethical and immoral or illegitimate manner, that exploitation can be termed as biopiracy. Now let us see some of the famous case studies of the biopiracy. We will start with Maya ICGB. So these are the US researchers from Georgia University. They exploited the Mexican Maya tribes indigenous the knowledge base without any prior informed consent, or without any FPIC, free prior informed consent, or even any benefit sharing. The tactic used by the US firm is that they actually formed an NGO, a puppet NGO. There is something called Pro Maya. It's a group in Mexico. They actually made it, but it's a puppet NGO of the United States, and they control everything for the sample acquisition. So, well, they didn't develop any commercially viable product, but still on the initial stage. So, this particular MyICGB group has been invalidated, and it is now no more in existence. Yet another case is basmati rice. So, a firm called Rice Tech in the United States, they filed for a patent for a certain hybrid of the basmati rice, and they tried to patent the name basmati rice. While of course, basmati rice is in use in India for thousands of years, and the Indian government as well as environmental groups from India intervened, and application finally was rejected by the patenting office in the United States as well in the Europe. Next example is Darjeeling tree, yet another geographical indicator that is similar to the trademark and copyright. Certain plant varieties, plant or industrial varieties of a particular location, you can tag it with a GI, geographical information. So, Darjeeling tea is a very, very famous tea variety grown in the Darjeeling Valley of the West Bengal. So, the trademark of Darjeeling was granted to teas which are indigenously grown in Japan as well as in the French by the respective patenting office. So, that is actually it is superficially as well as in deep. If you look at this case clearly, it is a violation of the Copyright Act, because Darjeeling is a GI of India. So, the patent is still in existence as of this particular module. So, situation is actually in stark contrast with other cases of the GI. For example, producers like champagne, a sparkling wine variety that is grown only in vineyards of the French Champagne Valley. That is actually no other firms can market champagne, the trademark, because the trademark is registered with the vineyards of the France. Or tequila, yet another alcoholic drink from Mexico. So, any other country, they can never actually market the product, they can never brand it as tequila. Or shiitake mushroom, shiitake valley in the Japan. So, the name shiitake refers those products coming from that particular place in Japan. So, no other mushroom producers can claim that they are actually producing shiitake by naming it shiitake. So, that is a deceptive ploy employed by various commercial products firms as well. Yet another example is Cassia amara. That is that's an indigenous plant that grows in French Guiana. As you see, the French Guiana had been a former French colony. So, during the imperial colonial time, the French researchers have acquired this sample, or rather appropriated the sample, or exploited the indigenous resource of this French Guiana, and then they developed a successful anti-malarial compound, and finally they got a patent for it. But this extract of this particular cassia plant had been in use in French Guiana for thousands of years, and no benefit sharing, nothing. So, the case is still sub judice, so it is still under the court. Yet another case is about the neem. W.R. Grace, an American firm, along with the United States Department of Agriculture, obtained EU patent, European Union patent for extracts of neem for antifungal properties. But the neem, as you see, it has been used in India in Ayurveda for thousands of years. And after the patent application was filed, number of environmental groups from India had intervened, including Vandana Shiva, who is a famous environmental advocate. She intervened, as well as the government of India intervened, and finally EU Patent Office revoked the patent in 2005, which is good news. Turmeric is yet another product that had been in use in Ayurveda for, as we all know, in Ayurveda for thousands of years. but at least 4 United States patents, including one from expatriate Indian investigators in the United States University. They filed and they successfully got the patent for various pharmaceutical uses of the extracts from the turmeric plant. So, US Patent Office revoked all 4 patents after the counterfile by CSIR of Government of India as well as many other Indian governmental organizations. So, finally, all 4 patents were revoked, which is rather a good news. Yet another example is tamarind. So, tamarind is India's largest producer of the tamarind, and tamarind paste had been in use in Ayurveda for again a lot of years. But a number of patents, almost like 30 patents worldwide has been granted, and only very few patents granted to Indian researchers. So again, that is a question: is could you term this tamarind patents as a violation of indigenous knowledge, and could it be termed as biopiracy? But all these patents are still in existence in Japan, EU, as well as in the United States. Karela is yet another plant. Bitter gourd, Karela. So the extracts of okra or Karela is in use in Ayurveda for thousands of years, and now a number of US patents are still in existence. For example, in 1999, United States firm Cromac Research Incorporated, they obtained a US patent for the herbal mixture that contained the okra juice. So again, that could be termed as a case of biopiracy. Another case is Jar Amla. Fox Chase Cancer Center in the United States in Philadelphia, they successfully got a patent, European Union patent for the extracts of the Jar Amla plant, that is Phyllanthus neruri, for the treatment against the hepatitis B disease. However, this plant extract had been used in centuries in Indian traditional medical systems, including Ayurveda and Unani, Siddha as well, for treating jaundice, but that patent was not yet revoked. Brazil berries is a very interesting example. Probably this is a textbook example of what a biopiracy is. So the case goes like this. One University of Washington Madison researcher on his trip to private trip to Africa, he noticed that this indigenous tribes in Gabon eating Brazil berries. So it is an indigenous plant varieties in the Africa, Gabon. So he noticed that it's very strange why they are actually consuming as a remedy. So out of curiosity, he got this particular berry nuts back to United States, and his further research at University of Washington, they actually developed a number of interesting compounds from that particular plant. So including low calorie artificial sweetener, so natural sweetener basically, but that is not really a cane sugar. So which is 2,000 times sweeter than the cane sugar. So it's a big product. It's commercially successful with almost 100 billion US dollar profit for the Americans, including for the University of Madison. But not a penny of this went back to the Gabon tribes. So that is actually an exploitation. No prior informed consent was obtained, as well as no fair, equitable benefit sharing in this case. Yet another case is captopril. So it's a heart ailment, which is a drug developed by the venom of the lancehead viper snakes, Bathrops genera. So this snake's venom, traditionally the Amazonian tribes, they use this venom to during the conflict between the tribes, as a warfare. So it has been in use for thousands of years. So the US firm, they obtained the venom from the Amazonian tropical rainforest from the tribes without their consent. They developed this the heart ailment drug, and then finally they developed the drug, and which is commercially successful. The firm Bristol Myers Squibb, they patented it in 1977. However, no profit sharing was made to the Brazilian firms. That is a good example of what constitutes biopiracy. Another example is enola bean, which is rather what do you call, rather a funny example what the Enola bean is. The bean was patented in 1999 by the patent applicant whose wife name was Enola. You know, so it was actually a Mexican yellow bean which is in use and which is actually you know, exported by the Mexican farmers to US as well as to Europe for, you know, tens of years. But immediately after the patenting in 1999, you know, impacts were truly tremendous, with more than 90% of the profits started going away, affecting almost 20,000 farmers of Mexico. So farmers filed a complaint, and in 2008 the patent was revoked by the American US Patent Office. Another example is quinoa. So the plant quinoa, which is a staple food for Quechua tribal populations in Bolivia as well as in Peru and Chile, the US University of Colorado obtained a patent in 1994 for that particular plant. As I told you earlier, United States Patent Office do patent the plant varieties, but in India, of course, plant varieties are not patented. So, you know, after a tremendous pressure as well as request from the Quechua tribes and other indigenous tribes from these countries, University of Colorado abandoned the patent. Yet another case is Rossi periwinkle, which is an indigenous plant variety. The plant is called Catharanthus roseus. It's a native plant of Madagascar in Africa. So during the time of British colonialization, this plant went out of you know, this Madagascar, and it has been now planted almost everywhere in the tropics of the world. So United States you know, firms Eli Lilly, they developed two compounds that is potentially anti-cancer, I mean it's a blockbuster drugs, vinblastine and vincristine, from extracts of Rossi periwinkle. But although they generated immense fortune by the sale of these two chemotherapeutic drugs, again nothing has ever went back to Madagascar, where it has been in use for thousands of years as part of the folk remedy. Yet another interesting story is about BT brinjal. You know, BT brinjal is it's a genetically modified organism. It's a plant, brinjal plant, with that includes the Bacillus thuringiensis gene, which imparts the resistance for the insect. So Monsanto, which is an American you know, company, through its Indian subsidiary May Company, they obtained seeds of Indian varieties of the vegetable brinjal, aubergine or eggplant without any prior informed consent from the National Biodiversity Authority of India, NBA. So normally the companies who are biodiversity in India, they need to get the prior informed consent from NBA, but this particular Monsanto never got any consent from that one. And they conducted large-scale trials in collaboration with local agricultural university, for example, you know, the University of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, without any prior informed consent. So from the NBA, of course, seemingly it looks like in periphery, it looks like a clear violation, but it turns out that they really got the permission, informed consent from Department of Biotechnology, which is an appellate authority from rather than the NBA. So this particular, in 2005, they got this particular you know, the consent. So the case is reveals administrative inadequacy and lack of effective interdepartmental communication. So rather than biopiracy, it's actually a problem with Indian bureaucracy in 2005. Now let us see yet another case study of artemisinin, that is an anti-malarial drug. You know, the effect of the wormwood plant Artemisia annula had been in use in Chinese folk remedy for thousands of years for treating malaria. In 1979, the Chinese researcher Tu Yao, she never obtained a patent, but she rather published the findings in a Chinese Journal of Medicine. So instead of patenting, she rather published that one. You know, that is again, this one is this artemisinin is a life-saving drug. Now again, the question is it ethical to patent a life-saving drug or rather not to patent? You know, the decision is extremely good that the researcher did. So as the drug was not patented, the drug firm held no monopoly. Of course, there was no firm involved. Any firms can, develop this particular drug, and the medicines were readily and immediately available worldwide. Albeit patenting could have earned China billions of dollars in revenue because it's part of their indigenous knowledge base as well. So this case illustrates the recurring ethical theme involving with the life-saving drugs. Is patenting ethical option? However, most of the drug screening bioactivity investigations for the drug development are being undertaken by the private research and development organization. Their business model works by they generate the fund from the sale of the drug. So if you are not patenting, so there is no money to fund further research by these private firms. So how this research can happen if you do not patent these drugs? So that's a very complicated affair. And for this discovery, Tu Yo got the Nobel Prize in 2015. That is a remarkable case. It has saved billions of lives worldwide. Yet another example is Hoodia. Hoodia is a plant, that is Hoodia gortoni. It's a leafless succulent plant which is native in Kalahari Desert of South Africa. Indigenous tribes of Kalahari Desert, they were using this particular, the tribesmen, they are called San people. They have been using this extract as a panacea. That's like a cure-all drug for different kinds of ailments. So American firm Unilever, they signed a memorandum of understanding with CSIR. It's like Indian CSIR. CSIR also do have in South Africa. It's also called Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in South Africa. So Unilever signed an agreement with CSIR of South Africa to screen the Hoodia for medicinal properties. So after spending almost $20 million and almost a decade, more than a decade, so Unilever finally abandoned the whole scenario of bioprospecting, because Hoodia plant has a, it's quite toxic. It's not commercially viable to obtain something commercially successful products from the Hoodia plant. So this example illustrates the problems with bioprospecting in general. Success rate is extremely low indeed. So there is a current slowdown, and a remarkable current phenomenon of the last 2 decades is that there is a huge slowdown in bioprospecting in general due to a number of reasons. The main reason is that post Nagoya Protocol and CBD of the Rio Summit, Earth Summit in Rio in 1992, legal hurdles have become increasingly cumbersome, so that sample acquisition is very, very difficult to obtain. So that is one main reason for this particular slowdown. And also, the saturation of the tribal remedy, as most of the tribal remedies have already been developed into the drugs. So there is nothing else to take the shortcut through. So that is yet another case of this particular slowdown. So nowadays, bioprospecting is mostly replaced by the combinatorial chemistry based total synthesis. So most of these even the complex biomolecules could be synthesized. For example, Taxol, you can synthesize the Taxol total synthesis, from the scratch by the organic chemist. So that is yet another reason for the current slowdown. So instead of screening large number of natural products, so there is yet another approach of the molecular docking based approach. So it first lookward, towards ourselves. For example, if we have a breast cancer, we look what causes the breast cancer. So the cancer biologists, they try to elucidate the pathways involved with the breast cancer development. So then they look at certain key component of this cancer development pathways, and then they look for something that can actually, a ligand molecule that can actually block the particular pathway. So the ligand molecule can be searched against a database of the natural molecules. So this approach is far more specific and directional, unlike the trial and error method that is being used in bioprospecting. So this particular method is hugely popular these days. So yet another method approach is screening from the natural product. The pure compounds are isolated from each extract, and then they put this pure structure elucidated into the structural database, for example PDB, the structure of this pure compound, and researchers would now be able to dock the structures of the potential target molecules of the disease pathways as just explained with these database. So it's an in silico approach known as the molecular docking approach. So in summary, bioprospecting, there are several confounding factors to call it bioprospecting or biopiracy. For example, ethics of the globalization. So anti-global propagandas always term, no matter is it actually ethical or unethical, any form of exploration is termed biopiracy. So that is perhaps that is incorrect or it's correct. It depends upon the subjective interpretation of you. So ethics of colonization and the politics, that is also very, very important to be considered. For example, is it how ethical is those sample acquisition by the imperial colonizers that they got this sample hundreds of years back during the time of colonization, analogous to the story I just told you about Kohinoor diamond as well as Egyptian mummies. So ethics of ownership of the natural resources, is it actually ethical to patent the natural resources? Also, is it ethical to patent a life-saving drug? These are highly complex ethical decisions and there is no objective answer. It all depends upon the social construct. So, biopiracy, the term as such involves exploitation of indigenous knowledge base without any prior informed consent or without any equitable benefit sharing. So this could be, the resources could be plant based or animal based or genetic resources. So it could be genes or plant extracts or anything. So in summary, biodiversity is highly useful, and biopiracy is a term that used to refer unethical exploitation of indigenous knowledge base without any prior informed consent or equitable benefit sharing. Thank you.